All right, for our second coding talk, we are going to talk about how to do dialogue between two characters, but using variables instead of just waiting for person to finish using the wait command. As you can see, I'll switch over to the example that I made for my create a story assignment. You can see all of these wait commands in orange here, and there's a lot of them because we are hard coding in here the time to wait for each character to finish, which means if we extend any of their dialogue, like let's say I wanted to extend this bit here, it's kind of long. Maybe I wanted to make this 4 seconds instead of 3 seconds. Everything after that for this character and everything after that point for this character would be off. The time would all be off. The timing would all have to be adjusted, and you would have to do all that by hand. And that would be incredibly tedious. And that might not be the only thing that you might want to edit. As this isn't much of a game here. This only lasts, a couple of minutes in terms of dialogue. So you can imagine if I had made an entire game with multiple characters talking, how hard that would be to maintain, right? And good programmers, one thing that we focus on is being able to maintain our code, right? Making code that is easy to maintain, which means avoiding issues like that. Things where if we have to change one thing, we have to change a whole host of other things. We want to avoid that whenever we can. So variables are an amazing way to do that. So here I have just the cat Scratch talking to a dog named Dot. And right now they're just introducing each other. So so Scratch says, "Hello, I'm Scratch." And the dog says, "Hi, Scratch, I'm Dot." Now, as you can see, if I press the green flag on this, they're just both going to talk at the same time. And I could add a wait function for Dot to wait the 3 seconds that it takes Scratch to introduce themselves. But instead, we're going to do what I said earlier. I'm going to go ahead and make two variables here. So if that was too fast, what I did was I clicked there on variables, which is the orange dot, and then this button up here that says make a variable. So the variable I'm going to make is just going to say Scratch finished. And then I'm going to make another one that says Dot finished, just to say that Scratch is finished talking and Dot is finished talking. By default, when you create a variable, they show up here, which is really good for scores in a game where you want to keep track of scores, lives, right? It's also just good for debugging. So I'm going to leave this open for right now, just so I can kind of see the numbers switch as I need them to. But in this instance, you would definitely want to hide this later, which you can do by clicking the blue check over here when you're done so that those go away. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and under Scratch, set Scratch finished to 0 when the green flag is clicked. And under Dot, I'm going to do the same thing. Dot will have when Dot finished, set to 0 when the green flag is clicked. And now all I'm going to do for Dot is I'm going to say wait for Scratch finished to be 0. So wait until equals 0, and then say Scratch finished. Make this a little bit bigger for everybody to see. There we go. So now I have wait for Scratch finished to equal 0. Now you'll notice, right, that Scratch finished does equal 0 at the beginning. So the very first thing I have to do before he speaks is set that to 1. And I'm not 100% sure if this is going to work. I didn't test this yet because technically speaking, we're going to have to wait here. I don't know how fast this is going to go before it switches it back to 1. So let's see. So we do have to add one wait right at the beginning, just so, I guess what I could also do is just put scratch finish to 1 right from the very beginning. Oh, and I wouldn't want change by 1 either. Let's make that 0, set that back to 0. There we go. So we can set scratch to 1 here, right from the beginning, and see if that works. All right, so that still doesn't work. So we will have to have dot just wait right at the very beginning, but then you wouldn't have to do this after that. So set dot to 0, and let's go ahead and wait just for a very short amount of time. We'll do 0.5 seconds. That should be long enough for the scratch finish to be 1. So when we start this, hello, I'm Scratch. Oh, and of course I didn't set scratch to be back to 0. So of course dot's not going to talk. when I record these, I do them pretty much live. So I like to show you guys that, I make mistakes too. Definitely happens all the time. So we'll put set scratch back to 0. One thing about variable naming, right? It's finished. 0 usually means false and 1 means true. So I guess technically I should swap these or rename them, not scratch finished, but scratch talking. If scratch is talking, he'd be at 1, and if he's finished, he'd be at 0. I'm just going to leave this the way it is right now, but just so you all know, I'm making a mistake here in terms of naming my variables because that's not incredibly clear. Let's go ahead and try this now. Hello, I'm Scratch. Scratch should turn to 0 now, and then when he does, dot talks. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'll speed this footage up, but I'm just going to go ahead and add a bunch more dialogue just to show that now all we have to do is flip the variable instead of having to do a whole long list of wait commands, and it should be a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and I'll speed this part up. All right, and now I've got my code here for both. And you'll notice here that there's some repetition, right? So we've got wait until finished, and then all the way down until wait 5 seconds. And what we're doing is we're setting their variable to 0 to say that they're not finished. So I fixed the numbering. Now I put it to 0 to 1 so that the name is correct. But we're setting that 0. They're not finished. So scratch is finished, 0. That's not true because now they're talking, right? Then they're speaking. And then we're setting that variable is scratch finished. We're now setting that to 1 because it's true, right? And then we have a little bit of a wait period here so that they don't just rush right on to the next thing that they're going to say. I made this 0.5 seconds, but it could probably even be shorter, but that doesn't really matter. So if you're going to use this method, which I definitely recommend you use this, I recommend throwing that bit into your backpack, which I'm going to show you in a moment. But first, let's just run through this. One thing I want you to watch is the variables ticking over from 0 to 1, and you're going to watch that bounce back and forth as their conversation bounce back and forth. So let's go ahead and try that. So Scratch is talking, and then he's finished, so it sets to 1, and now he's talking. And he's at 0, and now look, see it bounce. So now he's finished, he's talking, and that 1 and 0 bounces back and forth until they're both done talking. They're both set to 1 and they're done. All right. So now, just to prove this, right, I can change one of these things and I won't have to edit anything else. So I'll change I love baseball to 2. Let's set that to 5 seconds. And now I won't have to mess with any of the timing. And it should all still work. Let's go ahead and take a look. So hi Scratch, I'm Dot. What's your favorite sport? Now he's going to hang on I love baseball for an extra amount of time here. But as soon as he's done, Dot talks. And then the conversation goes back and forth till they both say goodbye. if I were to do that with this story, if I were to just change something here, like if I were to go to this wizard and change this one here from 3 seconds to 5 seconds. Now, you're just gonna have to trust me that this program worked earlier, but now watch how their conversation is fine. It's going good. They're talking. Now it should mess up here. Yeah, see, no, they were supposed to both disappear. Now she disappeared first, he disappears second. Now they're talking all over each other, all because I changed that dialogue just a little bit from 3 to 5. So I'm going to change that back before I save it, because that did work earlier. So just to prove that that worked. Okay, now what I'm going to do is go back and show you what to add to your backpack so you can use this for your own code, right? I would drag out from, well, basically everything I showed earlier, right? Wait until finished, all the way down to wait 0.5 seconds. And then just take that variable out of there so you can pop in the variable that you want. And then you'll have to switch this drop down to the variable that you need. But everything else is fine here. You'll just change the text and for how long you want them to say it. But this should still be 0 always. This should be 1 always. And the wait 0.5 is fine. That you can keep that there. It could probably be even shorter, but that's fine. Make a comment for this. And just say something like this. This is the code for creating dialogue. Hello. For characters using variables. Just change the variable name to the name you made for that sprite and put the variable in for the other character in the empty oval at the top. And that's it. That's a long comment, but there we go. And that's the code. That's the only code you'll need to make this work for 2 characters. For 3 characters, it gets a little bit, it's pretty much the same. Actually, I was going to say it's a little more complicated, but it's the same. You would just switch this to that 3rd character when it's their turn to speak. And that's it. All right, let's go ahead and put this in the backpack. And that's it for this coding talk.